Don't lie to me. I've dealt with people like you before. Give me the bag.
I've served this country for over 2 decades. I've never stolen anything in my life.
Veteran was accused of theft at the grocery store. Seconds later, the truth silenced everyone. The fluorescent lights of Martinez Family Grocery cast harsh shadows across the narrow aisles as 58-year-old Thomas "Tom" Bradley navigated his wheelchair through the cramped space between the produce section and the canned goods. His left leg, lost to an IED explosion in Fallujah 12 years ago, was a constant reminder of his service in Iraq. But Tom had long since adapted to life with his prosthetic and wheelchair for longer shopping trips. Tom wore his usual attire: faded jeans, a simple gray hoodie, and a baseball cap that covered the scars on his scalp from the same explosion that had taken his leg. He kept his military service private, preferring not to draw attention to his disabilities or his veteran status. In his experience, people either treated him with uncomfortable pity or awkward hero worship, and he preferred to be seen simply as Tom, not as a symbol of anything larger. Martinez Family Grocery was a small family-owned store in a working-class neighborhood where Tom had lived since his medical retirement from the Army. The store served a diverse community of immigrants, retirees, and young families who appreciated the personal service and reasonable prices that the Martinez family provided. Tom had been shopping there for 8 years, and while he wasn't particularly social, the staff knew him as a quiet, polite customer who always paid in cash and never caused trouble. Today's shopping trip was routine. Tom needed groceries for the week and a few items for the small apartment he shared with his service dog Rex, a German shepherd who had been trained to assist with his mobility and PTSD symptoms. Rex waited patiently in the car, as store policy didn't allow animals unless they were clearly marked service dogs, and Tom's vest for Rex was being cleaned. The store was busier than usual, with the afternoon rush of customers picking up items after work. Tom moved methodically through his shopping list, placing items in the basket attached to his wheelchair. He was particularly careful to keep his receipt from a previous purchase visible, as he had learned that his appearance, a middle-aged man in a wheelchair with visible scarring, sometimes made store employees suspicious. What Tom didn't know was that the store had recently experienced a series of thefts, and the staff had been instructed to be extra vigilant about suspicious behavior. Unfortunately, the description given to employees was vague enough to encompass anyone who appeared to be loitering or moving slowly through the store. As Tom reached for a can of dog food from a high shelf, struggling slightly with the reach from his wheelchair, he didn't notice that store manager, Carlos Martinez Jr., was watching him with growing suspicion. To Carlos, Tom's careful movements and frequent pauses to check his shopping list appeared to be the behavior of someone planning to steal merchandise. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose assumptions, reveal character, and ultimately demonstrate the power of truth in the face of prejudice. Tom completed his shopping methodically, checking items off his handwritten list as he placed them in his wheelchair basket. His total came to $4.83, exactly what he had budgeted for the week. Living on a military disability pension required careful financial planning, and Tom had learned to stretch every dollar while still maintaining the nutrition he needed for his health and Rex's well-being. At the checkout counter, Tom was served by Maria Santos, a teenage cashier who had been working at the store for 6 months. Maria was normally friendly and efficient, but today she seemed nervous and kept glancing toward the office where her manager was watching. "Good afternoon," Tom said politely as he began placing items on the conveyor belt. "Hi," Maria replied, her voice slightly strained. She began scanning items quickly, occasionally looking up at Tom with an expression that seemed almost fearful. Tom noticed her nervousness, but attributed it to the busy afternoon rush. He had learned not to take other people's moods personally, understanding that everyone had their own struggles and challenges. As Maria finished scanning the items, Tom reached into his jacket pocket for his wallet. The movement was careful and deliberate. His injuries had left him with limited mobility in his left arm, and retrieving his wallet required a specific sequence of movements to avoid pain. "That'll be $47.83, Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom pulled out his wallet and began counting out the exact amount in cash. He always paid in exact change when possible, a habit developed during his military service when precision and attention to detail had been matters of life and death. As he counted the bills and coins, Tom didn't notice that Carlos Martinez Jr. had approached the checkout area and was watching him intently. Carlos was a man in his 30s who had recently taken over management duties from his father, and he was feeling pressure to reduce the store's losses from theft. "Excuse me, sir," Carlos said, his voice carrying an edge of authority and suspicion. Tom looked up from counting his money, surprised by the interruption. "Yes, I need to see your receipt from your previous purchase." Tom was confused. "My previous purchase? I haven't made a previous purchase today. This is my only transaction." Carlos's expression hardened. "Sir, I saw you moving around the store for over an hour, and I observed you taking items from shelves and placing them in your jacket pockets." The accusation hit Tom like a physical blow. In his 8 years of shopping at this store, he had never been accused of theft or treated with suspicion. "I haven't taken anything. Everything I'm purchasing is here on the counter." "Sir, I'm going to need you to empty your pockets and allow me to search your wheelchair." The words hung in the air like an accusation of guilt. Other customers in line began to notice the confrontation, and Tom felt the familiar flush of embarrassment and anger that came with being singled out for his appearance or disability. "Manager," Tom said, trying to keep his voice calm and respectful, "I understand you're trying to protect your store, but I haven't stolen anything. I'm happy to show you my pockets, but I want you to understand that this is very embarrassing and hurtful." Carlos was unmoved by Tom's reasonable response. "Sir, if you have nothing to hide, then you won't mind proving it." Tom slowly reached into his jacket pockets and pulled out the contents: his wallet, a small bottle of prescription medication, a folded piece of paper, and a small plastic bag containing dog treats for Rex. "What's in the bag?" Carlos demanded. "Dog treats for my service dog. He's waiting in the car." Carlos examined the items suspiciously, then turned his attention to Tom's wheelchair. "I need to check the storage areas of your chair." It was at this moment that Tom made a decision that would change everything. Instead of becoming angry or defensive, he reached into the small storage pouch on the side of his wheelchair and pulled out a folded document. "Before you continue with this search," Tom said quietly, "I think you should see this." Tom unfolded the document with careful, deliberate movements, his hand shaking slightly, not from nervousness, but from the controlled anger he was fighting to suppress. The paper was official military documentation worn from years of being carried but still clearly legible. "This is my Purple Heart citation," Tom said, his voice steady, but carrying an undertone that made several customers stop their conversations and listen. "I received it for injuries sustained while serving my country in Iraq." Carlos glanced at the document, but remained unmoved. "That's nice, sir, but it doesn't change the fact that I observed suspicious behavior." Tom's jaw tightened, but he continued with the same measured tone. "What you observed was a disabled veteran trying to shop for groceries while managing chronic pain and limited mobility. Every movement I make has to be calculated because of my injuries." Maria, the young cashier, was now visibly uncomfortable with the situation. She had never seen her manager treat a customer this way, and something about Tom's dignity in the face of accusation was making her question what was happening. "Mr. Martinez," Maria said quietly, "maybe we should—" "Maria, please continue with other customers," Carlos interrupted. "Sir, I still need to complete my search." Tom looked around at the growing crowd of customers who were now openly watching the confrontation. He saw a mixture of expressions, some sympathetic, others curious, and a few that seemed to assume he must be guilty of something, or the manager wouldn't be treating him this way. "You want to search my wheelchair?" Tom asked, his voice carrying across the store. "Fine, but I want everyone here to understand what's happening." Tom reached into another compartment of his wheelchair and pulled out a second document. "This is my Bronze Star citation. I received it for valor in combat while serving with the 3rd Infantry Division." A murmur went through the crowd as people began to realize that this wasn't just any customer being accused of theft. An elderly woman in line behind Tom spoke up. "Young man," she said to Carlos, "this gentleman is a war hero. What are you doing?" Carlos, feeling the pressure of the crowd's attention but unwilling to back down, responded defensively. "Ma'am, I don't care what his military record is. I saw what I saw." Tom pulled out a third document, and his voice grew stronger, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "This is my combat infantry badge. I earned it during house-to-house fighting in Fallujah, where I lost my leg saving the lives of my fellow soldiers." The store had grown quiet, except for Tom's voice. Even customers in other aisles had stopped their shopping to listen to what was happening at the checkout counter. "And this," Tom continued, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a small leather folder, "is my military ID card, which identifies me as a 100% disabled veteran who sacrificed his body in service to this country." Carlos was beginning to look uncomfortable, but he pressed forward. "Sir, I appreciate your service, but—" "No," Tom interrupted, his voice now carrying the steel of someone who had faced enemy fire and survived. "You don't appreciate my service. If you appreciated my service, you wouldn't be humiliating me in front of these people based on nothing more than your assumptions about how a disabled person moves through your store." Tom reached into the final compartment of his wheelchair and pulled out a small device that several customers recognized as a medical alert system. "This is my emergency medical device. I carry it because my injuries sometimes cause me to lose consciousness without warning. Every careful movement you interpreted as suspicious behavior was actually me trying to avoid a medical emergency in your store." The silence in the store was now complete. Carlos was beginning to understand that he had made a serious error in judgment, but his pride prevented him from immediately backing down. It was at this moment that an older man stepped forward from the crowd. He was wearing a VFW cap and walked with the bearing of someone who had also served in the military. "Son," the older veteran said to Carlos, "I served in Vietnam, and I know courage when I see it. This man has shown more dignity in the last 5 minutes than you've shown in your entire life." Other customers began to speak up, expressing their disapproval of Carlos's treatment of Tom. The situation was rapidly turning into a public relations disaster for the store. But Tom wasn't finished. He reached into his wallet and pulled out one final item, a small plastic card that would change everything and silence every critic in the store. "And this," Tom said, holding up the card for everyone to see, "is my Medal of Honor recipient identification card." The silence that followed was absolute and profound. Every person in the store understood the significance of what they had just heard. The revelation that Tom Bradley was a Medal of Honor recipient created a moment of stunned silence that seemed to stretch for eternity. The Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration awarded for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty, was held by fewer than 3,500 living recipients. Carlos Martinez Jr. felt the blood drain from his face as the full weight of his mistake became clear. He had not only falsely accused a customer of theft, but he had humiliated a genuine American hero in front of a crowd of witnesses, many of whom were now recording the incident on their phones. I didn't know," Carlos stammered, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Tom's expression remained calm, but his voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had earned the right to speak with absolute moral clarity. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. You saw a disabled man in a wheelchair and assumed the worst." The older veteran who had spoken earlier stepped closer to Tom, his eyes filled with respect and recognition. "Sir, may I ask what action earned you the Medal of Honor?" Tom nodded, understanding that this moment had become about more than just his personal humiliation. "October 15th, 2011, Fallujah Province. My unit was ambushed during a patrol. When an IED disabled our lead vehicle and wounded 6 soldiers, I left cover and made multiple trips through enemy fire to evacuate the wounded. On my final trip, I was caught in a secondary explosion that took my leg and left me unconscious." The crowd listened in absolute silence as Tom continued. "I was told later that my actions saved the lives of 6 soldiers, 3 of whom had families waiting for them at home. The Medal of Honor isn't about being a hero. It's about doing what needs to be done when others are counting on you." Maria, the young cashier, had tears in her eyes as she listened to Tom's story. She looked at her manager with a mixture of disappointment and anger. "Mr. Martinez, how could you treat him this way?" Carlos was now facing a crisis that went far beyond a simple customer service issue. The store was full of witnesses, several of whom were recording video that would likely be shared on social media within hours. His treatment of a Medal of Honor recipient would become a public relations nightmare that could destroy his family's business. "Sir Carlos," said his voice shaking, "I sincerely apologize. I made a terrible mistake." But Tom wasn't finished. He had endured the humiliation and false accusation with dignity, but now he was going to ensure that this moment became a teaching opportunity for everyone present. "Mr. Martinez, your apology is noted, but it doesn't address the real problem here. You saw a disabled person and immediately assumed criminal intent. You treated me as guilty until proven innocent, and you were prepared to search my personal belongings based on nothing more than your prejudices." Tom's voice grew stronger as he continued. "I didn't serve my country and sacrifice my leg so that I could come home and be treated like a criminal for having the audacity to shop for groceries while disabled." The crowd murmured their agreement, and several customers began expressing their support for Tom and their disappointment with the store's management. An elderly woman approached Tom with tears in her eyes. "Sir, my grandson served in Afghanistan. Thank you for your service, and I'm so sorry this happened to you." Tom nodded graciously, but his attention remained focused on Carlos. "Mr. Martinez, I want you to understand something. This isn't just about me. Every disabled person who shops in your store is now wondering if they'll be treated with the same suspicion and disrespect." Carlos was beginning to understand the broader implications of his actions. This incident could damage not just his reputation, but the reputation of his family's business that had served the community for decades. "What can I do to make this right?" Carlos asked desperately. Tom considered the question carefully. "You can start by acknowledging that your assumptions were wrong and your treatment of me was unacceptable. But more importantly, you can use this as an opportunity to train your staff about treating all customers with dignity and respect." It was at this moment that Carlos's father, Carlos Martinez Sr., entered the store from the back office. The elder Martinez had built the store's reputation on community service and respect for all customers, and he immediately sensed that something serious was happening. "What's going on here?" the elder Martinez asked, looking at the crowd gathered around the checkout counter. The answer he received would force him to confront the fact that his son had nearly destroyed everything he had spent decades building. Carlos Martinez Sr. had built his grocery store on the principles of respect, community service, and treating every customer like family. As he approached the checkout counter and saw the crowd of agitated customers surrounding his son and a man in a wheelchair, he immediately knew that something had gone terribly wrong. "Papa," Carlos Jr. said, his voice barely above a whisper, "there's been a misunderstanding." The elder Martinez looked at Tom Bradley, taking in his military bearing. Despite his seated position, the dignity with which he held himself, despite obvious distress, and the documents spread across the checkout counter, his experienced eye immediately recognized the official nature of the military paperwork. "Sir," Carlos Sr. said to Tom, extending his hand, "I'm Carlos Martinez, the owner of this store. Please tell me what happened here." Tom shook the older man's hand firmly. "Mr. Martinez, your son accused me of theft based solely on his observation of my movements through your store. When I tried to explain that my movements were careful due to my disabilities, he insisted on searching my wheelchair and personal belongings." Carlos Sr.'s face darkened as he listened to Tom's account. He had spent 40 years building relationships in this community, and he understood that trust once broken was nearly impossible to rebuild. "Sir, may I ask about your military service?" Carlos Sr. asked respectfully. Tom gestured to the documents on the counter. "I served in Iraq with the 3rd Infantry Division. I was medically retired after losing my leg in an IED explosion while evacuating wounded soldiers." The elder Martinez examined the Purple Heart citation, the Bronze Star documentation, and finally, the Medal of Honor recipient card. His hands trembled slightly as he held the small plastic card that identified Tom as one of the nation's most honored veterans. Dios mío, Carlos Sr. whispered in Spanish, then looked at his son with an expression of profound disappointment. Carlos, do you understand what you have done? The younger Martinez was now fully aware of the magnitude of his mistake, but his father's reaction made it clear that this was about more than just a customer service failure. Papa, I was trying to protect the store from theft. We've had problems lately. Silencio! The elder Martinez commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had built a business through decades of hard work and community respect. You have dishonored our family name and our store. Carlos Sr. turned to address the crowd that had gathered. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize to all of you for what you have witnessed here today. This is not how the Martinez family conducts business, and it is not how we treat our customers. He then turned his full attention to Tom. Sir, I cannot adequately express my shame at how you have been treated in my store. You are a hero who has sacrificed for our freedom, and you deserve to be treated with the highest respect. Tom nodded, appreciating the elder Martinez's sincerity. But he wasn't ready to let the moment pass without ensuring it became a learning experience. Mr. Martinez, I appreciate your apology, but I want to make sure everyone understands what really happened here today. Your son didn't see a thief. He saw a disabled person and assumed the worst. That kind of prejudice hurts every disabled person who tries to live a normal life. The elder Martinez nodded gravely. You are absolutely right, sir, and I want to make sure this never happens again. Carlos Sr. then did something that surprised everyone in the store. He walked to the customer service counter, picked up the microphone connected to the store's public address system, and made an announcement that could be heard throughout the building. Attention customers and staff, I am Carlos Martinez, the owner of this store. I want to publicly apologize to Mr. Thomas Bradley, a Medal of Honor recipient and disabled veteran who was falsely accused of theft by my son. Mr. Bradley served our country with distinction and sacrificed his leg while saving the lives of his fellow soldiers. He deserved our respect and gratitude, not suspicion and humiliation. The announcement continued. Effective immediately, all Martinez Family Grocery employees will receive training on disability awareness and customer service. We will also be implementing new policies to ensure that all customers are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance or physical abilities. Tom was moved by the elder Martinez's public acknowledgement, but he had one more point to make. Mr. Martinez, I want everyone here to understand something important. I didn't reveal my military service to claim special treatment. Every customer, veteran or civilian, disabled or able-bodied, deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. The crowd erupted in applause, and several customers approached Tom to thank him for his service and express their support. The elderly woman who had spoken earlier handed Tom a piece of paper with her contact information. Sir, my husband is the commander of the local VFW post. We would be honored if you would consider joining us for our next meeting. Tom smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. Ma'am, I would be honored to attend. Carlos Jr., who had been standing silently throughout his father's response, finally stepped forward. Mr. Bradley, I want to personally apologize for my actions. I was wrong, and I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. I hope you can forgive me. Tom looked at the younger man for a long moment before responding. Son, I forgive you, but I hope you'll remember this moment the next time you're tempted to judge someone based on their appearance or abilities. Carlos Sr. then made an announcement that would become the climax of this extraordinary encounter. "Mr. Bradley, I want to offer you free groceries for life at our store. It's the least we can do to show our respect for your service and to apologize for today's incident." Tom was touched by the gesture, but his response demonstrated the character that had earned him the Medal of Honor. "Mr. Martinez, I appreciate your offer, but I don't want special treatment. What I want is for you to treat every customer the way you would want your own father or grandfather to be treated." The elder Martinez smiled, recognizing the wisdom and humility of a true hero. "Sir, that is exactly what we will do." 3 months after the incident at Martinez Family Grocery, the store had become a model for inclusive customer service and disability awareness. Carlos Martinez Sr. had kept his promise to implement comprehensive training for all employees working with local disability advocacy groups and veteran organizations to develop programs that would prevent similar incidents. Tom Bradley had become a regular customer again, but now his visits were marked by genuine warmth and respect from staff and fellow customers alike. The young cashier, Maria, had asked Tom to help her understand more about veteran issues, and she was now studying to become a social worker, specializing in veteran services. Carlos Martinez Jr. had undergone a profound transformation. His father had required him to complete sensitivity training and volunteer at the local VA hospital as a condition of keeping his job. The experience had opened his eyes to the challenges faced by disabled veterans and had made him a passionate advocate for inclusive business practices. "Mr. Bradley taught me that assumptions are dangerous," Carlos Jr. would tell other business owners who came to learn about the store's new policies. "I almost destroyed my family's reputation because I saw disability instead of dignity." The store had also become a gathering place for local veterans who appreciated the respectful atmosphere and the elder Martinez's genuine commitment to serving those who had served their country. A small section near the entrance now displayed information about local veteran services and support groups. Tom had indeed joined the local VFW post and had become an advocate for disabled veterans' rights. His story had been featured in veteran publications and had inspired other businesses to examine their own policies and training procedures. The most important thing that came out of that day, Tom would tell audiences when he spoke about the incident, wasn't the apology or the recognition. It was the understanding that every person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. The Martinez family had framed Tom's Medal of Honor citation and displayed it prominently in their store, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the values they were committed to upholding. Most significantly, the incident had sparked a community-wide conversation about disability awareness and veteran support. Other businesses in the neighborhood had implemented similar training programs, creating a more inclusive environment for all residents. Tom still shopped at Martinez Family Grocery every week, and Rex was now welcome in the store with his service dog Vest. The veteran who had been accused of theft had become a symbol of grace under pressure and the power of truth to transform hearts and minds.